Public Works building at roughly about $840,000 to fix some of those deficiencies out at that site. So our facility assessment total for all of the buildings, based on what we identified, is roughly about $4.9 million in fixing and repairing of the existing city facilities, which some of these things obviously have a higher priority than others, but this is an all-encompassing report for all of the conditions that we noted in those buildings. So we also went through a space needs assessment with city staff, and this is broken out into your current existing utilization, and then the planning column there is what we noted as far as what we would need to continue operating in these buildings long term. As you look at the municipal building, the city hall here, currently there's roughly about 16,800 square feet of space available in this building. And looking at the staffing numbers, you can notice that we're really not changing the staffing by much. It just looks at adding some additional staff for the library over time. But many of the changes that you see here are operational based, as it looks at how we utilize office space, how we utilize lobby space, how do we look at meeting spaces, and looking at how we would right-size some of the departments in this building. And so the square footage change in the building really is only about 1,000 square feet, but it really is looking at how we can better utilize the existing space and accommodate some of the programmatic elements that we identified in there. For the fire station, there is currently roughly about 6,500 square feet of space being used there. I do notice we have a typo in there related to our net to gross factor. We'll fix that. But looking at the total square footage of the 7,600, that bears a little bit of explaining, because one of the things that we had talked about was if we were to look at combining the fire station or moving the fire station someplace else, there are some best practices related to decon and health and wellness stuff that you currently don't have at that station, that if you were to rebuild it, you would probably add additional square footage to handle those changes. But if you leave the fire station where it is, we would be recommending just doing some of those deferred maintenance items. It doesn't make sense to try to add on and adapt that building to try to add some of those health and wellness things to it, just be given its age and some of that type of stuff. So when you look at the kind of the reinvestment in facilities, that's the number that we had in the facility assessment. And then as we look at potentially replacing it, if that's a direction that the city wants to go, that program would increase that building size to roughly about 7,600 square feet to add, decontamination space, separate gear wash areas, and some of that type of stuff that are really out in the apparatus area right now. So the community center, much of the square footage change there is just related to storage space and adding some right-sizing some of those interior spaces. And then Public Works is looking at what it would take to increase the size of the Public Works garage to meet some of the programmatic elements that we had talked about, and then adding a sanitation garage as well. And so that's where much of that square footage comes for those items there. So we did look at a number of options, including reinvesting in your current facilities, this building in particular, and how would we look at solving some of the space issues in here. And one of the things that we looked at is, could we create a on-grade entry to this building to deal with some of the level changes and accessibility issues that we have in this building. And so we kind of focused on the north side of the building. This would require some significant conversations related to the alley access and parking and stuff like that, because this is a very tight site. As you know, it's right up against the alley on the one side and then the street going east and west. But we did want to explore, is there a way that we could add on to this building? And so what we looked at doing was adding an addition onto the building which would move all of the city administration into a new addition on the north side, moving the public on-grade accessible entrance to that location as well, relocate the lobby and the museum into that area so that the public coming into the building would basically have a singular location where they could go to get most of their city business conducted at. We would do some renovation to the library. With moving city administration out of their current spaces, we could move the town of White down to that level as well. And then with moving the lobby, moving the museum over to the lobby area, that would allow us to fix some space for the police department in there. So all of the things that are in this building would stay. We would just kind of reshuffle some things around. By moving the town of White down to that main level, that would allow us to renovate the upper level. If you want to go to the next slide. Because one of the things that we had talked about during our focus group meetings was having, a larger training meeting room up on this level. So this would expand the boardroom into what's now the break room on the other side, giving a much larger boardroom for the city that could be used not only for the council meetings but other boards and commissions as well as training. East Range Joint Powers would stay where they are, but we would then renovate the area where the town of White is to get some actual handicap accessible toilets on this level and get a break room for staff on the upper level. So we'd have much less public coming up to this level other than for public meetings and that type of stuff. So we also looked at a solution which would keep the footprint of this building as it is today. This one is labeled library relocation because in order to get the amount of space that we would need to right size some of the other spaces in here, this would suggest that the library would get relocated to an alternate location, whether it's a rented space or an addition to another building. That would relocate them to an off-site location. This would allow us to renovate the existing library to again provide an on-grade entry off the north parking lot, provide a lobby in that location, relocate the museum and city administration spaces, still expand the PD and move the town of White down to this level. And I should have noted before in all of these, this would expand the toilets on that level as well to provide adequate toilets for those users. And then the upstairs would stay the same as what we had talked about before, which would expand the council chambers and boardroom up on this level. So the other things that we looked at was, are there sites in the city that would allow for a new city hall library complex to be built elsewhere, which would then allow repurposing of this building for something else. And so there were two parcels that were identified and that would be large enough to accommodate that. So for this solution here and this site here, this would suggest a combined City Hall library facility on an off-site location. So this would be new construction, a new construction solution for that. As we look at the Public Works site, that's obviously a fairly large parcel, but focusing in on where Public Works is today, it should be noted that this diagram needs to be updated because the water treatment facility is different than what we've got shown on here. But the idea is that there's enough room in this particular portion of the site to add a new Public Works facility and supporting structures for that, including a future sanitation garage. So Public Works really focused on using the current parcel that you have for that, but rebuilding the buildings that you have there into newer facilities. So obviously the big question is, well, how much are all of these different solutions going to cost? So we did go through a cost exercise to understand what we think these various solutions would cost. So looking at this current building here, this would require about 8,000 square feet of renovation, about a 3,300 square foot addition, and then deferred maintenance work for the exterior of the building. I would note that the numbers that we have in here for cost per square foot would include the rest of the deferred maintenance stuff that we had talked about: carpets, flooring, carpet, ceilings, lighting, mechanical work, all that type of stuff. So the deferred maintenance numbers are only those things outside of that, which would be the exterior skin of the building. So we've identified in current dollars around $270 a square foot for renovation, about $450 a square foot for the addition, getting us in about $300,000 worth of deferred maintenance work, gets us to a little under $4 million in construction cost. Because there are ancillary costs for, fees, testing, contingencies, and that type of stuff, we do recommend a project cost multiplier of 32% to get you to a total project cost. That would include all of those ancillary costs, so that it would be kind of your all-in number that you would look to finance. For that would be roughly about $5.2 million for this option. For the relocation of the library, that would obviously reduce the amount of addition we would have to do. That would bring our construction cost down to about $2.4 million, $2.5 million, or a total project cost of $3.25 million for that. Keeping in mind, this does not address where the library would go, so that would have to be taken into consideration once that conversation occurs as well. And then there's always the question of, well, what's the do nothing, but we still have investments to make in this building. And so if you take the report that we put together, we have a roughly a deferred maintenance cost of about $2.45 million to replace the mechanical systems, windows, finishes, that type of stuff. So all of those things that we had identified there. A slightly lower project cost number, about 25%, because we're not doing as much furniture and equipment and that type of stuff. It's roughly about $3 million for just the reinvestment in this building. And then if we take a look at that, the new build options here, we're looking at those two sites and looking at that cost of about $450 a square foot for new construction. This would include City Hall, the Town of White, the police, and the museum, so everything that's in this building today. Roughly about 12,300 square feet would get us to a construction cost of about $4.6 million with a total project cost of about $7.3 million. And then adding the library in there would be roughly about another $3.2 million. So a total of about $10 million to rebuild this at a new location. And then same thing if we look at the Central Park site. For these, the cost of the site is neutral. We're assuming utilities are there and that you can build on these sites without any problem. And then for the Public Works, so looking at the replacement of the Public Works building, we're looking at about $7.7 million to demolish the existing building and build a new 22,000 plus square foot facility. And we have roughly about $450,000 in there to replace the salt shed, about $2.8 million for a sanitation garage sometime in the future. And then one of the things that was asked is, well, what would it take to make that building bigger to add the city offices? Just the city offices part, not the Town of White or the library or any of that type of stuff. So roughly about 2,200 square feet would be roughly about $1.3 million. So we're trying to cover a bunch of different bases with some of this stuff. So I know that was a lot of numbers, a lot of data there. So what I would like to do is to throw it back to Mayor and Council for any questions or feedback, or if this needs to be digested for a while, we're happy to come back and discuss this further. But we're really at that point where we would like to get some feedback on the study, what we've discovered, what we're recommending, so that we can make any final adjustments to the facility report, so that you can have a good planning tool as you look at kind of future funding and stuff like that. So.
Well, thank you. That was a lot to go through in a short period of time.
Yes.
So I don't know what the council's preferences are. I think this is a great starting point. And thoughts rolling around in my mind anyway, or whether we should have kind of almost a workshop session to dive into it, because this is going to dovetail also into what's financially feasible as well as what's physically needed. I wonder about citizen, transparency again, of showing what some of these options are, getting the public kind of brought along. Any thoughts from councilors? How we?
Yeah, on the public piece, I mean, would this be something that would potentially go to a referendum as far as here are some options? Or is it just something that we decide on? Because I do think we're going to spend this kind of money, and we're going to have to get the citizens involved at some point.
So I guess what you would do is you narrow it down to the plan, right? You'd have a decision where we're going to go, and then you would try and seek funding to help with that. Like, I'm not sure how much Virginia get for their public safety building there.
They got roughly about $9.5 million from the legislature through one bonding bill, and then given all of the inflationary pieces, they were able to secure another $2 million in the last legislative cycle, so about $11.5 million total from the legislature for that. They are also working with the USDA and the IRRB as well.
So I would look at it like that. We would pick, this is what we want to do, this is our vision. We would spend the money to get that shovel ready and designed and ready to go, and then we would start seeking exterior funding to what we can do with the levy. And then you would kind of figure out, hey, we're at that point where it's fundable, and off we go.
So what would be the preferable way to, I mean, I feel this is new to me, and a wonderful job of really laying out, a little difficult to choke on the numbers and things, but as we individually, councilors, should we focus our contacts with you in terms of questions, comments, alternative suggestions, things like that? I don't know the next step, but I could picture before the next meeting wanting to get back to you with just some questions and comments myself. I don't know, councilors?
Well, I think with all the different sites involved, and depending on what is decided at one site could affect another site.
Yep.
And I think maybe after we look at all these different options, maybe we need to develop a game plan where we're going to go first in the order before we can even begin to develop a financial plan for it.
Maybe we need a roving site visit too, right? It wouldn't hurt to see some of these things firsthand.
One thing that will help simplify this a little bit is you can almost remove the community center from it, because we do have $637,000 sitting, waiting to be used, and that'll be part of our budget talks for trying to get that project up and running. So I think that money is almost in place to take care of that. So then you're just kind of looking at City Hall, a little bit in the Fire Hall and Public Works. I think everybody knows Public Works Garage and City Hall are the two ones that really stand out and really need help.
That City Works Garage, you talk about tearing it down and building a new one, but is that building so bad that it couldn't be saved for cold storage?
Yeah, there are nuances on each of these that would take further conversation with the council and with others to kind of decide,
If it is usable yet, it might make the new city garage a little bit more affordable if you don't have to build cold storage area on the new one, and you can use the old one.
Yeah, and our report kind of focused on kind of a sequential replacement piece of it, and looking at where a future sanitation garage would be. You might have to expand your site area that you're looking at, just based on the location of some of the existing buildings and how you could right now, our report tends to suggest you would, keep that until you're ready to build the sanitation garage, and then you'd have to remove that in order to build that, but if, again, it's just nuances to how you would approach that site development, so.
I just hate to spend money to tear down a building that maybe we could have used.
Mhm.
And if we went with a decision to move out of this building, would we still have to spend the 4.9 million to upgrade it for the next tenant? Or would we just do something else with this building? So if we're gonna spend this money on all these other buildings, these new buildings for the city hall and whatever, what would our liability be in this building as far as having to upgrade it before another tenant could move in? The
Only what you
4.9?
would- Only what you would negotiate with them.
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't think there's a requirement that you upgrade the building beyond what you need to function for a city. Like if this is gonna be years down the road, there are probably some deferred maintenance things that you're gonna want to keep up with.
Preservation,
Right, I mean, the biggest challenge for these buildings is water intrusion, and so the more water that you can keep out of the building, the longer you can maintain it, and so it gets just down to the condition of the building when you're looking at selling it or bringing in another tenant into it.
Are there options for, consideration, this is Aurora, but we're doing so many things cross-range. It always struck me, and not bringing any knowledge to the table on maintenance and public works garages, but that bays for working on things, tools that need to be worked on, seldom used pieces of equipment. It just strikes me that there might be opportunities to create some kind of a joint facility. Again, I speak with no operational knowledge of the public works and so on, but unlike other parts of the state, this area in particular is engaged in a lot of joint efforts because of our proximity. Yeah. So, just thoughts that to go out there. It's always nice to have friends sharing the bill for dinner. Yes.
Mayor, to your original question, I think there are a lot of typical next steps. You touched on a number of them, which is one, certainly go through, and if you got questions on them, I would suggest feeding them to Luke so that we have a conduit for some of that information so that we can then kind of get a consolidated viewpoint on it from the entire council. And again, I would encourage a work session to talk through the various ideas, and we're happy to attend and answer questions. We didn't do this in a vacuum. We did have a committee that we worked with to kind of hone in on what the recommendations are, but you all each have a different viewpoint that you might bring to the table that we hadn't thought of, whether that's consolidation, sharing, a different site location, any of that type of stuff. We can certainly offer feedback and advice on that as well.
So, you're not actually asking for any action. This is primarily launching the whole harness. So, councilors, anything further on this item? All right. Well, thank you again so much, you and your first, for bringing expertise. So, let's see, moving on in the agenda, 17.2, Community Center Parking Lot Usage Request. City Administrator, what does this involve?
Yep, so we just had a gentleman reach out to us who would like to use space in the community center parking lot for a softball fundraiser for their team. They are working with Aaron's, the Aaron's building next door for utilities, for water, and they've secured that. They're just asking for a couple hours if they can host a volunteer fundraiser in the parking lot. Just space.
I'd make the motion that we allow the Iron Range bunkers the use of the parking lot.
I'll
second that.
This has made the motion.
I'll
Councilor
support it.
McClassen has supported it.
That's what it is.
That's the name of their team.
Any further?
That's the name of their team.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's adopted. 17.3, THC cannabis moratorium draft ordinance. I believe that Lindsay indicated this is something that should be tabled, is that?
Yeah, this is just informational only, just to bring it up in discussion. There's two members of the cannabis committee here, I'll let them speak as well too, but we're just getting to that point where the moratorium's coming up here. We've met with we've met with some owners in town and on some businesses, and we're just looking for feedback and input on the draft ordinance.
You know, the buzz at the League of Minnesota Cities annual conference was everybody's focused on this. It's a work in progress, but passed along to Lindsay a detailed manual essentially that has been produced by the League of Minnesota Cities that I think we're getting more guidance from a lot of sources. She said she's been working directly with one of the law firms recommended
Yes.
by League of Minnesota Cities to make sure that what we do is not only policy-wise, but pragmatically able to be done. So can we just regard that as informational and study the ordinance? Or
I
do you-
would table it till the next meeting. I think there might have to be some action, like the
Sure.
moratorium ends
Yep.
the end of this month.
Oh, really? Okay, all right, a motion to table?
Make motion table 17.3.
Motion by Councilor Hess,
Support.
supported by Councilor Godey. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. 17.4, awarding the bid for the Central Avenue pavement repairs. This matter was discussed in our previous agenda setting meeting. And City Engineer, do you want to review maybe the what appears to be the successful bidder?
Yeah, so as noted at the agenda setting meeting, KGM was the low bidder with a bid of approximately
107.
107. Well, so there's a correction on that.
Oh.
Their math was off on one of the unit prices, so we corrected that, and it was 111,000.
Okay.
So
And which firm was that?
KGM Contractors.
Okay.
And so what this would be the official notice of award to them, to award them the contract. So upon that, we would have, authorization to enter into an agreement to move that project forward. So that's the pavement repairs on Central. So we're taking out 5 feet, going down to the subgrade, putting new gravel back in and building it to get those bumps out. So
I'll make a motion to award Central Avenue project to KGM.
Motion by Councilor Hess.
I'll support that.
Supported by Councilor McCluskey. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is adopted. 17.5 on the agenda, Resolution 2024-47, delegate WCA Authority. City Administrator, do you want to explain that?
Yep, so this is a watershed,
Wetland
or
Conservation
Wetland,
Act.
Wetland Conservation Act. Currently, our very capable past administrator, Britt C. Venice, is that designee. I don't believe she's been here since maybe like 2015, so we need to update that. And since Bolton Inc. is now our city engineer, we're asking that they are our representative for that, for our projects.
A motion to designate Bolton Inc. for that position.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilor Godey.
Second.
Supported by Councilor Hess. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The resolution is approved. 17.6, approve industrial park construction management proposal. Let's see, city engineer?
Yeah, so we came to council in, I think it was December or January with the design proposal scope of work. So now we're through the GMP price with Adolphs and Peterson, so this is just the construction services piece of the project. So we'll be out there on site with AP, monitoring the contractor, tracking where things are getting installed, how they're getting installed. We'll have someone on site pretty much the duration of the project. Just making sure that the city's best interest is kept in mind. So.
City administrator, do you want to chime in with, I assume you would recommend approving the proposed?
Yeah, I would. And again, keep in mind, these are funds that would be covered all under the IRRB grant. So that's where the funds would come from for this.
Yep. It'd be hourly not to exceed, so if we don't use the budget, you guys, you're not liable for that cost.
Would it be Jordan that's going to be doing that as well? So we're familiar with Jordan as well.
So is there a motion to
I
approve?
I move we approve 17.6,
Moved by
industrial park.
Counselor Hanson, supported by Counselor Hess. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we have our construction management team in place. So 17.7, the IUOE Local 49 agreement opening, the opening salvo of contract negotiation here, right?
Yep.
So, do we need to have something to acknowledge at least?
Yeah, we should acknowledge the receipt of that and that we are going to open up the negotiation process.
I'll make that motion to acknowledge the receipt and open the negotiations.
Moved by Councilor McClassic, is there support?
I'll support it.
Supported by Councilor Godey. And any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Hanson, all right. Any further discussion on that? All right, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we're into contract negotiation. All right,
Is there
under
a
other,
formal committee on that, just so there's some direction, or what typically are you gonna do?
We have a committee that was the start of the year.
Oh, was appointed to do that?
Is appointed.
Okay, all right, I just wanna make sure.
anticipating that
Yeah.
would be going on. Under other, any other business?
Well, what about this NDS one that's in our packet?
I believe that's part of Josh's construction committee,
Is that part of yours?
part of the construction.
The NTSBs, yes,
Yep.
they're included as our subconsultants. So we'll work with them and then they'll invoice through us. We don't mark up
So
invoices.
anything else we missed?
I just wanted to make sure because.
No, yep, you're
Well,
good.
that's good, yeah, make sure we deal with our business.
I do have one other thing under other with the attorney's blessing. Sarah Shiketa was here at the Misabi Trail, asked for a letter of support to be signed by our mayor. When she came here and presented, and it's kind of time conscientious for them to get their funding. They'd like it sooner than later, so with your approval, the mayor can sign that, we'll get that up.
This is the moving to Hoyt Lakes and.
Yeah, we're just saying that we support the project.
Support the project.
Is all we're doing, and this is the extension, the Misabi Trail extension, for them to try and get funding. We're just saying that.
So is there a motion to
I'll make a
authorize me
motion.
to send that letter?
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Councilor Hess, supported by Councilor Hanson. And any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That matter passes. Any other matters to bring to the attention? Councilors, anything else? If not, let's see, we're scheduled to, just under our next regular meetings, Tuesday, July 9th is going to be the St. Louis County Highway 100 project meeting at the Aurora Community Center, at which we'll probably have a quorum, so I think that's the reason notice was given of that. And our budget working session is July 11th. And Tuesday, the 16th, is our regular special agenda setting meeting. So with those considerations in mind, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
One thing on that, we're also gonna post for our 3 o'clock meeting, because that's the agency meeting that day. So the 6 o'clock is the public meeting, which we're expecting you may want to attend. It's the same meeting, but what they do is they break it into 3 separate meetings that day. 1 o'clock is the businesses can come in and present and listen to that. At 3 o'clock is the agency meeting, which would be like the school, Forest Service, ourselves, railroad. So we'll also change that to 3 o'clock as well, and then 9 o'clock for the public. So we'll have or 6 o'clock for the public, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm sure we'll get abundant updates.
Yeah, you'll get a bunch
So that sounds good. I believe there is a motion on the table to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilor Kolasich, supported by Councilor Hess. Any further discussion? If not, we stand adjourned, and you're all invited to come over to this Aurora coronation proceedings.
Maybe.
Well, I'm glad we got